We are going to call our meeting to order and get started. We are down 2 members. One of them will not be making it. That is Roberto. He is stuck off island, was not able to get back this morning, and I'm not sure about Andrew's whereabouts. So hopefully he is on his way. We have town council with us today, and we've had some discussion about our process. He's going to give us a little bit of an overview of the recommendation for us to proceed with finishing off our rankings, which our intent is to do today. We need to wrap this meeting up by 10 o'clock because there's another meeting in this room. So hopefully we will be able to do that. If not, we will have to schedule another meeting, but I think it is not anybody on the committee's desire to do that. We really want to wrap it up today with a recommendation to the board. So John, you want to give us a little overview? Can everybody hear me? I feel like it's okay. Thanks.
So good morning, committee members. Do I have to push that? Yeah, good morning, committee members. So what I have recommended to Libby, and I'm now recommending to the committee, is that the committee attempt to reach a consensus and assign one of the 3 rankings to each proposal on each of the 9 evaluation criteria. We're not going to total up individual rankings by the committee members. We're following a 30B process here where the committee reaches a consensus, as I said, on a ranking for each criteria, and then an overall, what's called a composite rating at the end of that process. The second thing that I wanted to say was that I have been aware that there have been any number of unsolicited emails that have gone back and forth from a variety of interested parties. And I have to advise the committee members that you should base your rankings solely on what's in front of you as part of the official record. And just to be clear, that would be the responses to the RFQ that you received, any information that was directly solicited by the committee, either during the interview process of the 2 applicants or the response to written questions. I should say written responses to questions that the committee members received. Emails, rumors, verbal comments that you've heard, the committee really cannot consider any of that. And so I wanted to make sure, and Libby agrees with this, that if the committee is comfortable just keeping your deliberations to what's in front of you and not considering extraneous material, then I think we can proceed. If not, we're going to have a problem here and we'll need to figure out what to do. So do all the committee members feel that they can look at this based upon the written submissions that you have in front of you and not consider extraneous material? Okay, so I think we can proceed at that point. And Andrew, I was just explaining the way this is going to work is the committee should attempt to come to some kind of a consensus for each criteria, what the rating is. We're not going to score or total individual members' ratings. We're going to look for one rating on each criteria and then a composite rating at the end.
Okay, so our first criteria is knowledge of the marketplace, right? And we all had, there were 3 HAs and 2 As. So
that's for Act Natural.
I'm sorry, thank you. That's for Act Natural. So a potential composite rating would be an HA-A, which is an acceptable way to do it, if everybody agrees. But I don't want to put words in people's mouths, so.
I'm okay with an HAA.
Yeah. Everybody good with that?
Mm-hmm.
I guess, okay, we'll do Act Natural first. Is that how we did it last time?
No, we did.
Did we go back and forth?
No, we did Massimo first.
That's what I mean.
Oh,
We
yeah.
did all 3.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Secondly, key personnel. Again, we have 3 HAs and 2 As. So to be consistent, we might want to do the same thing. Well,
Yeah.
feel free to.
Okay. I mean, if it's like the first one, right, is 3 and 3, and I get that because it's half and half.
Mhm.
But this is not half and half. This is 60-40, which is a difference. So I just feel like that's
This is half and half,
you're
isn't it?
essentially discarding.
Well, how do
one
you
vote.
get to 60-40?
Or-
There's 3 HAs and 3 As.
Or the for the second one, right? There's
Key personnel.
key personnel. Yeah, there's 4 HAs and 2 As, right? So essentially, we're discarding.
No, on well, mine. Is that?
No.
No,
What is it?
it's 3 HAs and 2 As. There's a different one that is what you're saying, but it's not this one.
Okay.
A different
If
criteria.
it's exactly the same, fine. But if not, then we're just discarding the vote.
Yeah. If not, we need to talk about it.
Yeah. I think that's just why I want the percentage. Can you explain why? I mean,
Well, let's do this one by one. So this one, according to what I received, were 3 HAs and 3 As. So for this one, I think you apply the same rationale. So it should be A-HA. The next one is the business plan.
that's number 3.
Yep, number 3. And on this one, there were 5 HAs and 1 A. So one composite ranking might be HA, because you might consider A to be sort of an outlier, or I shouldn't say a lower ranking than what the majority gave to be an outlier. You see what I mean?
I disagree that it's an outlier just because there's only
Okay.
6 of us. So.
Well, we don't have to use the term outlier, but I think when it's 5 HAs and 1 A, it seems to me there's a pretty clear consensus by the committee that they should be rated HA on this criteria.
Okay.
Criterion, excuse me.
Does anybody have a big problem with that? Or want to discuss it?
No. So at this stage, again, because we're not changing any of the votes that we made. We're just getting consensus on how we're
On the final.
consolidating
Yeah.
these. Yeah.
Yes, correct. So I'm sorry. That was 3. There's 3's HA. 4. Proposed timeline and development plan. All HA. No. 5. Staffing, job creation, and potential benefit to the community. There are 4 HAs and 2 As. So would we want an option would be to do what we did with another mix, which was say it's HA and A, or go with the majority, or what do you guys think?
I guess I'm confused with the majority because that's percentage. The majority of it implies a percentage, in which case we should all do all percentages. Because again, it's 2 votes. That's
So does the
Well,
HA?
I think on this one, we're on staffing and jobs creation. Everyone was HA except for Andrew and the chief, which were A. So I certainly think it merits a bit of discussion here. And I don't know whether Andrew and the chief have strong feelings on how this one should be rated.
Well, I think from my perspective, I looked at that. I was looking at the potential community benefit. I was looking at the not-for-profit model versus the for-profit model. And the not-for-profit model clearly gives a mechanism for charitable contributions back, reinvestment back into the community, or the for-profit model, it depends on how many investors they ultimately get, how much actually goes back to the community, or whether all the profit goes to the investors, which is more likely the case with most for-profit models. So that's where I looked at, and I think in this case here, Act Natural was the for-profit model, and the other one was the not-for-profit model.
So I'll just shoot right back.
Hey, Katie, I'm going to put you on the speaker, okay?
A for-profit business would be more likely to create jobs than a nonprofit.
Can you hear us?
So, I mean,
Yeah,
we're getting.
I think we could argue that one.
Okay.
But I could argue your point. I think that there's plenty of nonprofits that don't do anything for our community. So.
Well, but I think as we just heard a few minutes ago, we had to keep it within the parameters of what is before us. You read this one here, there's all kinds of investment in the community that's articulated, to funding the hospital transports off island, to doing things like that. You read this one here, and it's about giving Nantucketers an opportunity to be investors. That's the difference to me.
Yeah, so I'm just saying the question is, there's three parts of it: staff and job creation and potential benefit to the community. So I guess it's like we're describing the benefit to the community, which is semantics or an opinion. I personally think that small businesses are good for the community. That's my opinion.
Mhm.
You are saying that in their RFQ, which is correct, that they outline charitable contributions, but that shouldn't be taken away from someone else's plan just because they both are offering potential benefits, is my point.
Well,
and the opinion of which one is better is not really it's not really the job of this community to say who's better for the community, small business or nonprofit. I know plenty of folks that do nothing. So it's that I guess it's kind of a foregone conclusion. If you're just looking at nonprofit versus for-profit, then obviously a nonprofit by design is going to be more generous to giving because they're by law only allowed to give. So I just think there's multiple parts of this question.
Yeah, no doubt.
I just want to add as well that I think that the structure with the corporate side of this nonprofit as well seems that how that benefit gets distributed to the community isn't as clear as a classic nonprofit, because it does have this, the nonprofit ends up being a shell for business. My only question is, I don't think anyone is budging on how they rated it. So I do want to know how, particularly because both of you were the A's, if assigning it an HA is acceptable to you, if it's acceptable to us.
yeah, it's what we're doing, I guess.
Yeah.
I honestly, I haven't quite, I can't visualize how this works in the end, doing it that way, but I guess there's a plan.
Okay, so on this criteria,
HA select A.
yes.
It seems to me it'll go to the select board, and essentially the split in the votes will be noted and up for discussion in the review committee's recommendation. So,
John, is it reasonable if any of us feel strongly about our vote to voice that to the select board, or is this is the final chance for the committee?
So we're going to prepare a report to the select board, given the committee's overall recommendation. And I think if individual committee members feel strongly about a particular ranking, you could certainly submit a minority report.
Well, that solves our discussion.
Right. I think that would be fine. So the next 6, 7, 8, and 9, everyone rated them highly advantageous. So I would say that for those 4 criteria, they would be rated highly advantageous. Okay?
So now we're on the master as well.
Well, we have to do the composite rating. So as of this point, there are 6 highly advantageous, and there are 3
Advantageous.
there are
Highly advantageous.
there are 3 advantageous dash highly advantageous. So we have to deal with coming up with a composite rating.
Meaning if it's highly advantageous or advantageous or
Yes.
whatever? Okay.
Or if it's advantageous dash highly advantageous.
Okay.
It's clearly not going to be just advantageous.
Okay, so do we want to tackle that now? Or do we want to tackle it after the rank?
Well, I think it's probably best to tackle it now.
Okay. So what does everybody think about that composite ranking idea? Based on what we've already done, I'm just talking out loud here. I'm not saying this is what we should do, but based on what we've already done, we might want to rank it highly advantageous dash advantageous. That's a thought, but it doesn't have to be the only thought.
Don't want to discount anyone's votes. I mean, there were 8 votes that were advantageous, but again, I mean, getting away from the percentage, but there's clearly a disproportionate amount of highly advantageous votes compared to advantageous. I mean, there's 6 for each question. We're looking at a 5% highly advantageous versus advantageous votes overall.
So I think how I would phrase that, if I could be so bold.
Please.
So there were 6 highly advantageous rankings out of the 9 categories, and there were 3 advantageous dash highly advantageous. So one of the things you may want to look at is which of these criteria are more important to the committee, and for example, if the 3 advantageous dash highly advantageous are the most important criteria, then maybe that's what you stick with your composite rating. If it's the advantageous, if the highly advantageous, the 6 criteria are significant, then maybe you rank this one as a composite of highly advantageous. This is really a judgment call for the committee to make. Clearly, the highly advantageous outrank the second level, by 2 to 1. So it really depends upon your own view of how this should, overall, whether you think this is a highly advantageous proposal or an advantageous dash highly advantageous proposal.
Well, I would say for me, on those 3 criteria that we're split, highly advantageous, advantageous, knowledge of the marketplace is good to have, but that's not necessarily the most important of those 3 criteria to me. Key personnel is important, of course, but that can change throughout the life of the business. So that's important, but not the top thing for me. I guess my top thing of those 3 criteria would be number 5, staffing, job creation, and potential benefits to the community. So I gave that a highly advantageous. So that would, I don't know, that would be
Can we
mine.
just go around and just
Yeah, sure.
ask? So,
Okay, so read
highly
it.
advantageous.
So the question is putting those together. The
What is the
composite.
composite rating?
I hate to lose the advent. I like to have the detail.
We don't have to, we could,
We can still make that known.
yeah,
Okay.
but we could still call this one highly advantageous, advantageous.
Okay. As opposed to highly advantageous, those,
Correct.
but it's 6-3
Yeah.
are the 2
So
votes.
just
I mean, I
split.
think from a numbers,
I think we actually can ask our opinion.
yes, I know. I'm trying to decide.
You can think about it if you want. Henry, do you want to?
Highly advantageous. Or Andrew, you think?
I'm not comfortable putting it as highly advantageous alone. I think, when it comes down to the actual vote, that's the selectmen's call. I think there should be the nuances in the committee's discussion should be reflected.
I would agree with that, actually.
So are you changing yours
I'm changing mine. Highly advantageous / advantageous.
Okay, that, Andrew, that's yours as well.
Yes.
No. I'll agree. Highly the same, whatever that was.
Andrew articulated my concerns. So I would agree with that. I think.
So we have 4 highly advantageous, 1 highly advantageous, and then Roberto is not there. So
Who was the highly advantageous? Oh, thank you.
Okay, so our composite ranking for Act Natural is highly advantageous, right? We're good with that? Right. Mass Medispo. Criteria 1, knowledge of marketplace. That looks easy. Everybody said highly advantageous. Key personnel. We have 5 highly advantageous and 1 advantageous. So do we want to talk about that one a little bit?
I don't need to.
Do you,
I think we covered the discrepancies in the last one.
Yeah.
are you comfortable calling that one highly advantageous?
I mean, I'm gonna make my dissent and vote, probably not, but yeah.
No, but yes.
Classic.
I think we have to because that was what we decided on the prior
We
one.
did keep it to the same as what we just did.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
let me just
Yeah.
see how it's taken. Okay. You know, essentially I'm just marking the number of votes.
Okay.
So 3, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So you can kind of see it,
Sure.
and then we go down here and we see each person,
Okay.
what we put in.
Yeah.
And so then we do the final rating.
So we're saying highly advantageous here, and there may be some remarks from a committee member about that later. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
the report is more detailed than just 2 letters next to each name.
Yeah.
Then we don't need to discuss too much right here. If any committee member has an issue, they can put in the report that will be read by the selectmen who will ultimately make the decision.
Yes,
So that's, I think, as much voice as we can give to this.
correct.
Okay, business plan, we've got 3 highly advantageous and 3 advantageous. So highly advantageous / advantageous. Proposed timeline and development plan. 5 highly advantageous, 1 advantageous. Are you okay with going with highly?
That's number 4, right?
That is number 4. Number 5 is the thing that we might need to discuss a bit. We have 4 highly advantageouses, 1 advantageous, and 1 non-advantageous. So, thoughts about that?
HAA.
So this is the only one where a committee member rated a proposal not advantageous. And so Henry, I think we need to maybe hear a bit more from you as to, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
So I am. I just, and again, this is a opinion. I guess I just have a hard time seeing the benefit. I see a company that's paying very large amount of interest for a long period of time with an operational staff that is completely non-resident. And that, you know, you can add up all the people you want and show the percentages of people involved and not involved. But on the operational level, those are the people running the business. So you can have, in my opinion, you can have community boards and all that stuff. But if someone doesn't literally plant the seed, they can tell you all sorts of things. I've seen it in practice where you have a board of people who then try to influence employees. The employees run the show. And that's my experience, so that's why I rated it non-advantageous. Now, that's my opinion. Just in seeing that it's it presents a conflict to me, an inherent conflict. you know, if you have a group of professionals and a group of non-professionals telling the group of professionals what to do. You know, I've been on some boards of nonprofits where, you know, you have a professional who's running the executive director, and the board just goes along with whatever they say because that's the smart thing to do. I mean, this person's running essentially the business of the nonprofit. They know best. So I have a hard time understanding how that is going to be a beneficial relationship. And then also how, you know, I've sat on the other side and I've been the professional. And the board comes and says, well, what about this? What about that? And I said, well, that's really great, but in practice, it doesn't work at all. So I just kind of see that as a conflict. In terms of maybe deciding what's good for Nantucket. Also, and you know, maybe this is politically incorrect, but I'm a very, very strong supporter of small local business. And this is not a small local business. It's a nonprofit that is controlled through debt by a very large corporation. And I see that as I know. Just to make clear, I did not vote for 2 licenses. I think that we should have many more licenses. The market should decide who succeeds and who doesn't, not a board of politicians or vets or town personnel. So, you know, ideally, I'd like to see both of these groups produce a product. But I just, something doesn't rub me right about that. It's bothered me from the beginning. I just have a hard time understanding how that is not going to get hijacked, or maybe it's the wrong word, but how that's not going to get, you know, disproportionately influenced by the personnel. You know, if you have a group of non-professional, people who are not living in the industry day to day, then telling a group of professionals who you've hired at a very high rate, you're gonna disregard their opinions. Just if you had a conflict, you know, I don't see how they could resolve conflicts in a way that might benefit. Whereas the for-profit model for me is easier to understand because there's just no politics involved. It's what makes money and what doesn't.
Would you be comfortable with an HAA ranking here?
I'll make my dissent known. So sure.
Okay.
Rita, you said this was advantageous. So would you like to explain your rationale?
Elements of what Henry was saying as well, but I just found that the structure left me unsure that there was going to be real benefit in the staffing, in the jobs available, and in the community benefit, where the board, it was unclear how the board themselves were going to benefit, and having, in theory, the executive control, but none of the financial control. So I really didn't see the potential for as much benefit as they were trying to represent that they were going to have. And again, I think that a nonprofit as a shell for large corporation, I don't think there's going to be as much opportunity to distribute funds as was represented. So that was my A. And again, I don't see it changing. I'm okay with an HAA. And I'd shoot it over to Andrew.
Well, I think we discussed this the last time, and I think applying the criteria is what our job is, not to, you know, I'm sure the selectmen in your deliberations will have a wide-ranging discussion about the benefits of profit, nonprofit, and all that. I think that I'm fine with the HAA. Is that the proposal? But that's the reason I ranked both of them at that level. So. They both have local personnel, and you know, this freewheeling debate about which model is better, I just think is totally beyond what we're supposed to be doing. So
I would say that I think the jobs and the community benefit, the staff and the jobs were decidedly different to me in the two. And I think the housing as well. So,
Well, I think the housing was much less in the Act Natural. To propose a single family residence in a neighborhood doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. So that is not strong at all.
okay.
So
I saw an operational staff that was not from the So for me, it's who's running this day to day. I mean, I sit on it. I do a couple nonprofits. I go to them once a month, maybe. So I guess that was just my biggest discrepancy, because I see people who are going to be there every day versus people who are going to be maybe getting together once a month.
Okay.
So that's all I have.
All right. Well, this is all valuable input that I think we can include in our report. So I think where we are on this one then is HAA.
Yep.
Okay.
Libby, can I make a comment for the record?
No.
No.
Okay.
Thank you. We're trying to get through this. Item 6. Demonstration of historical local residency, community involvement, and/or community support of the applying entity, affiliated officers, personnel, and controlling persons. We have 4 HAs, 2 As.
We decided on HAA.
Yeah, I
That's
agree.
consistent with the rest of
Is everybody okay with that?
it. And then it's HA for the rest of it.
Yes. So with it, then we have the issue of the composite. We have, it's the same, I believe, is it not? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 HAs and 3.
Yeah, it's a tie.
Well, do we want to do the same composite? HAA.
Yeah, and plus, do we want to go around and say each one of them can just do the point? I mean, it's literally a tie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just give it the same.
Okay.
So, John,
Did you bring a coin?
no, I did not. I
Phew.
thought about it though. I think that it's based on some prior discussion that John and I have had. I think it's acceptable for the committee to say to the board, we have ranked them both highly advantageous to advantageous. Here's all the reasons why. It ultimately, of course, is a board decision. Our role was to evaluate the proposals based on the criteria set forth by the board and use our best efforts to establish a composite ranking for each. So again, it's up to the board anyway for a final determination. So is that?
That's perfectly fine. So I've had Katie Lockman on the speakerphone, just so that you all know. Katie, you've heard this discussion. Do you have anything to add at this point?
No, nothing specific.
Okay, good. Okay. So then the report back to the selectmen would be basically a tie ranking of H-HA. And I think it would be important for committee members who want to make an individual comment could submit something for inclusion, if that's okay. Otherwise, I think between Libby, Katie, and I, do you feel comfortable in giving sort of a general description of why the committee ranked each one of them the way they did?
I
Okay.
think so. And so our next step would be to prepare this report to the board. Right now, it's tentatively on the board's agenda for March 6th, since we have no meeting next week. And so in the report, we can, I'm not envisioning a super long report. I'm envisioning a page or two at the most.
Yes, correct.
That just sort of reviews the process that we did here and puts forth the composite rankings, and it could make note that there were some sort of minority views
Right.
that might be able to be expressed at the meeting, and if we can capture them in the report, here's what they are. But
So if somebody feels strongly, they should submit something in writing.
yeah,
Libby, would you be able to pull out as well which were the HAAs, a little bit like you did for the first one we went through, so that the board can understand if the HAAs were in the same categories? Or that would be great.
Yeah.
And of course, you go to the meeting as that's
Absolutely.
but not as.
No, you can give a minority report as a committee member. That's certainly fine.
Do we, so the report, I don't really see the committee having an opportunity to meet again to vote on the report. Is everybody okay with town council and I finalizing it based on what we've talked about here?
Yeah.
I'll send it around, but really just for sort of like editing. Or,
Well, I don't think we should do that, actually. I think we
Okay.
should just do it and submit it,
Okay,
because otherwise
we get into that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
I just have one point. I mean, to Henry's point about the number of licenses, I think that does factor in here. I mean, that's why we're doing this. And I mean, that was a choice to, put it at the minimum. So I do think that's worth noting in the report. I mean, I support what he said, that, if it were 3, then, both could proceed ahead, and we wouldn't have had to have all this time that we spent on this. But anyway, I think that's something to consider. And I think it at least deserves some comment in the report.
Yeah. Doesn't rub the right way though. We're potentially leaving someone out in the cold here. Everyone can have the opportunity to pursue this, especially considering how well prepared everyone is, and how much time and effort and probably money that they've all put in. So maybe there's a way to open that discussion back up for next town meeting. If there is a next.
And I think if any members of the public that are here, if they wish to be heard, the appropriate time would be when this is on the agenda for the selectmen's meeting during public comment.
Okay. I think we're done. Hopefully we're done. And hopefully we don't need to revisit anything. Thank you guys very much for your time. Much appreciated. Meeting adjourned.